Hello everybody, Larry Young here again with another segment of OLaMan Living Life with Purity. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about love and suicide and how they're related. As everyone is aware, we've gone through a real tough time this last several years with the COVID pandemic and the shutdown and the resultant effects that have happened to not just us here in the United States, but people all over the world. It's led to a rise of malcontents. Everyone's got a problem with something going on in the world, and they all feel like they need to be heard and they need to be acknowledged. They need to be respected. Their agendas that they feel are of utmost importance are the things that need to be dealt with first. And this comes out of a situation of trying to normalize poor behaviors, poor choices, environments that we're in right now. And in talking about the environment leading up to the 2024 election, when they appointed Kamala Harris on the Democratic side to be the candidate for the Democrats to run for president of the United States, one of her first interviews that she had just come back from Europe where they had one of these green energy summits. And the interviewer asked her, what is the plan? And she said, first thing out of the box is we need to lower the population worldwide. We need to cut back on fossil fuel consumption. We need to increase wind and solar uses. We need to decrease meat consumption. We need to do all these things. But the first thing out of her mouth was what she wasn't supposed to say. And that was that we need to reduce our population. And when she said that, the people on the left really freaked out. And she's never said it since. I'm sure she got a real ass chewing when she got off the stage for that one. Because none of these people were supposed to say the truth about what their intentions are and what their desires for goals are. And the first and foremost thing is to reduce the population. And so one of the ways they've instituted to try to go about this is they've been doing a lot of psychological operations on people. And I'm not so certain that the entire situation with the COVID shutdowns and things like that, all the masks, all the BS type of tomfoolery to have the 6-foot distance, the masks and all these things, none of those things were going to work if you have an airborne contagion. A simple cloth mask was never going to work. I know this because I had to study entomology to deal with black mold in a building I was cleaning out a number of years ago. And I knew that the only thing that was going to help you was a pressurized N95 mask that's going to kind of leave the marks and be strapped on so tight that air can't leak in from around the sides. It's all going to have to come through this filtered source. Well, none of that was happening. We had people with, the mask dripping down below their nose. I mean, it was just all, it was all an exercise to see how far they could get the human race to capitulate and yield their freedoms in the face of a presumed contagion going on. Not to say there wasn't something bad in the atmosphere. We had a new type of flu virus out there we'd never seen before. We didn't have antibodies for it. A lot of us were able to get the flu that came with it, the COVID, and we ran through it, 3-4 days of misery, but we were all better again. It's not the first time we've had the flu. It was a different flu, and a lot of people who were already weakened by bad habits in their lifetime, whether it be obesity, smoking, all of the above. A lot of them did perish with this because they couldn't stand the stress that was put upon their bodies by this new virus. So be that as it may, we had a lot of people yielded to this sort of scare, this enemy from outside that we all had to buckle down together and save ourselves with. If you didn't, then you were the problem. You wanted to kill people. You want to kill those grandmas. But that wasn't the case at all. And we did find this out afterward in going back through the statements made by like Dr. Fauci. Initially he was correct when he said those paper masks, those cloth masks aren't going to do anything for you. They're no good against this. Well, when he said that, it was the truth. But a couple days later, after the folks had gotten to him, the people in power, they got him to change his story, saying that masks had to be used and this is the way to go. Basically throwing all of his credibility out the window at that point. But I don't think he cared, because I think they paid him off generously. And money is a very intoxicating drug when it comes to truth and lies. And I believe that there was a lot of lies that were put out there. The 6-foot distance thing, none of it made any sense. But everybody adhered to it, because if they didn't, they could be shut down, or they could be arrested, or they could be blocked from participating. And nobody wanted to be shut down or not be able to get their milk or bread and things like this. So everybody capitulated. And I think that they probably, if they had a chance to look at it again, they probably wouldn't. But Monday morning quarterbacking isn't going to win the game. So we've got a real situation on our hands right now. So the first thing and foremost is that the world powers want to reduce our population. Now, right now, we've got about 8 billion people on the face of the earth. And from just reasonable assumptions, one could assume that the folks in power want to reduce our population by at least half. I think they'd like to get us down to about 4 billion people on the face of the earth. It'll just make it so much easier to provide jobs in the new AI world that's coming at us. One of our biggest problems we're going to have is keeping people busy. The old adage, about, idle hands are the devil's workshop. Well, I certainly concur with that. We need to keep people busy. And this is going to be one of the biggest problems that the people trying to run this planet are going to have, is once AI and the robots and other automated means of production are put into place, the world, we're not going to need so many people to help produce these products. And then you're going to end up having basically an idle set of people sitting around not being stimulated to do things, and they're going to end up getting into poor habits or no habits whatsoever, or they're going to break down and become even more depressed and fall into other poor behaviors, or ultimately even end their own lives because they're just too bored with life, don't see any reason in it. This is kind of what's coming at us. So I know it's dystopian, but it's getting closer and closer with every month. So we need to be aware of these things. And for a lot of us who have gotten past the age of 45 or so, it's not going to be as bad because we're already on our way out the door. Our life, really our best life has already been lived. Hopefully there's some more good stuff in there, but the best stuff happens typically before you're 45. I mean, the fun stuff happens afterward because then you got rid of the kids and you got some money to go play with. But don't tell them that because they don't want you, burning through their inheritance. But we have a real situation out there with our younger folks. It's going to be really problematic. And one of the things I'm looking at here is IQ test scores. Now, I went back and I did some research on this, and they didn't do a lot of testing on these things back in the 1800s. But scholars have been able to go back through and read through the abundance of writings and other printed materials from that time and tried to come up with some sort of gauge as to what they could have estimated would have been the IQ of the general population at that time. And in 1865, it was in the mid-80s as a general population rule here in the West. And it probably had to do also with what was going on over in England at that time too, because a lot of things were sort of married together as far as the books that people were reading and the types of information and the science that was agreed to and was being practiced in those days. The engineering was coming out. So between the years of 1865 and 1965, that's the time when people in Western civilization shared in the actual growth of the IQ number amongst the general population. And it went from an average of guesstimation of 85 up to 103. And that's a pretty good jump to have in just several short generations. So you figure a generation being about 25 years. So in the space of about 4 full generations, society, or Western society, raised its combined IQ, nearly 20 full points. That's huge. But that comes with people becoming literate. Even in 1900, we still had a pretty high illiteracy rate. And illiteracy, not being able to read and write, really does impact one's ability to raise their IQ. And a lot of things you can't do to raise your IQ after a certain age because all those faculties are pretty well cemented in. But there was a great increase between 1865 and 1965. Between 1965 and 1990, things stayed pretty low, stayed at kind of an equilibrium. Not a whole lot of growth took place, a lot of change out of information took place because technologies were changing and people gave up having to know about Morse code and picked up being able to hail somebody on the telephone, kind of like I just did here. Somebody's texting out to me. So these types of things were going on. There's a change out of information, change out of knowledge, but the IQs stayed right around that 100, 103 range. And right now in the West, between 1990 and 2025 in Western civilizations, they've seen a 3-point drop in average test scores for IQ. So right now, they say that the average IQ for people in Western civilizations is at 100. People in Middle Eastern or Islamic countries and societies are down at 80, 85 at the best. That has some reasons behind it as to why. A lot of it has to do with their practice of inbreeding and marrying their cousins as a cultural type of norm. This leads to bad effects. We've seen it in the gene pool. Anyone wants to question it, just go look at some of the portraits of the aristocracy and the kings and queens and ladies and lords of England back in the 1500s, 1600s, and even up in the 1700s when they were still banging it out with their cousins and making babies. It's one of the reasons that the Catholic Church much earlier had banned the practice of close marriages. So I believe that the Catholic Church, I don't know how long ago it was, but they had instituted a practice that you couldn't be married in the church, I think, to anyone who was closer than a second cousin. So they did understand that the problems with the inbreeding was not creating a better person or higher quality individual. It was causing people that might have been close to one another and had power and control centered in a certain group of hands, but they were having more problems with like hemophilia, bad teeth, mental instabilities, things like this. All these things that go with it. Poor bone formation, being just plain ugly. The typical norms of beauty and balance in the facial structures and all like that. It was all lost. I mean, if somebody has an eye clear up here, one down here, you might want to think about that first cousin thing. So, just saying. So that's not all the problem. That's just saying that people are getting dumber now, and a lot of the reason they're getting dumber is because of these things. It's also because I would submit is the advancement and the legalization in a lot of areas of marijuana. Now, I'm not going to be a prude. I'm not going to lie to anybody. I grew up in the 70s. I know what the stuff is, okay? But I knew what that stuff was. This stuff today is far more intoxicating and far more potent and has far more psychosis effects. And people are smoking this stuff, I mean, like crazy. They're not just smoking it like a rolled up joint or a marijuana cigarette in a bowl, smoking the flowers. They're smoking the distilled resins from it, in concentrated form. Some of this stuff is like 90%. Now, I don't know what the differences are, but 90% seems awful close to 100%. So, my golly, they say that the stuff that people were inhaling back in the 60s and 70s was probably more like 30 or 35. They grew this stuff along the river banks for World War II to make rope. And I remember growing up, my grandmother's house she was along the St. Mary's River. And there was always hemp was still growing up naturally. It was leftover hemp plants, marijuana, from the war effort where they've been growing all this hemp to make rope. So this was a thing. They saturated all your riverbanks around the Midwest and other areas to grow this hemp to make rope because they needed, all this rope for the war effort. The ships, the servicemen, rope was needed everywhere. Well, anyway, they didn't go through and kill it all. It's still there. And I remember seeing that as a kid. And I remember my dad would say, you stay away from that stuff. There's no good in that and all like that. And I didn't know what he was talking about. So I just thought he was saying stay off the riverbank. Well, we've got major psychosis going on with a lot of our population. And there's delusional activities. This helps to explain a lot of the problems with the Mandela effect that we have where, this person over here can see one set of facts and come to one conclusion. Another person over here thinks they've seen the same set of facts and they come to an alternate conclusion that is just way off base, not even close to being true. It's happening all the time. You can point to all sorts of situations. All you need to do is type in Trump Mandela effect, and you'll get a whole host of things that people out there want to claim to be true about Donald Trump or conservatives that just aren't true at all. These are things that they've manifested with their own delusional thinking. A lot of it is drug-driven. A lot of it is societal-driven through their social media platforms. But those messages are also being driven by other people suffering psychoses from inhaling the same marijuana. So the effects of the psychoses can be put upon somebody else by way of internet postings. And when somebody determines that they've got somebody out there is an influencer of theirs, and this influencer is high as a kite and says something stupid, Bill Maher, people get on with it. Whoopi Goldberg, people get on with it. We have to be mindful of these things. So we got people are doped up. They're trying to put it everywhere. It's dumbing people down. IQ is going down worldwide. Depression's going up. Anxiety's going up. And suicide's going up. Medically assisted induced death, that's going up. You want to die? Go to Canada and tell them you're depressed. They're doing it. They're raising, their numbers are doubling almost every year. And I think last year it was like 30,000 people. I mean, if this is an alternative to living, we have given up our humanity, and these are people that aren't feeling love. And this is leading to my next point. Our love relationships with our younger people are being replaced because of things like this and through TikTok and other influence platforms. Love relationships for our younger people are being replaced by codependence at best, or dominance, which is by design from these influencers telling these young women to flex. Now, flex is a term that's used for them to empower themselves and to show the world just how powerful they are by going out and flexing and doing something really, courageous or whatever. But a lot of times it's just doing something stupid that women aren't designed to do, and it ends up getting these young ladies hurt. They try to do anything a man can do, and then they try it and they fall flat on their face and end up in the hospital. They wonder what happened. So we got these women are being pressured to flex, while men are being told to be more empathetic or feminine because they're toxic. And so men are being made to feel that they are the problem when women are out there trying to disentangle themselves from a hetero relationship with somebody because they want their dominance in this thing. And the men, the boys, whatever, aren't ready for this. It goes against their nature. And just because you can try to tell somebody to do something doesn't mean they can actually do it and perform that way, because that's not how God designed them. And so the boys then get into this terrible, disturbing situation in their heads, which is right there with the girls and the women that are going through stuff. And so they're both having these like crazy delusional references as to what a human sexual relationship is supposed to be about. And so nobody is hooking up for love. Well, maybe there is still some traditional relationships out there. Thank heavens for that. But so many are just hookups, and they don't care. They carry no value. They carry no meaning. It's strictly mechanical and physical. You get enough of that going on in your life, and then all of a sudden, you don't feel like you matter anymore. And this is what's going on. These women are being pressured to flex. The men are being pressured to be more empathetic or feminine, jazz hands kind of stuff. Both of these traits or these behaviors are unnatural. It doesn't mean that somebody can't do it and succeed with it, but as a general rule, it's unnatural across the whole population. So sex is becoming just a physical entertainment and a recreation type of element. It's not built upon love or concern or genuine feelings towards the other person. It's just like, how fast can I get them naked and score and then get home and get out of here? So women are actively keeping track of what they call body counts. And the body count references how many guys they've slept with. Seems like a rather peculiar stat to want to keep track of. And they feel that this body count, the higher the body count that they can generate, the more girl power that they have for them. And other women, other girls on these platforms say, oh, you go, girl. 350, man, you got to hit that 1,000. Whoa, 1,000, 350, 10% of that. STDs are still out there, folks. We should ask Al Capone how it goes. So, I know he didn't have penicillin, but now, if the women are out there and they're taking this attitude about this dominance and body count and all like that, and the guys know that they're just there for another number, it's no reason that the guys aren't calling the girls back up on Monday or whatever to say, hey, what you got going on this week? You want to go out and maybe get a pizza or something? No, they're not doing that. The guys don't care because they're just going to go get another girl looking to, increase her body count too. I mean, it goes back to why buy the cow if they're going to give you the milk for free? Guys are always going to be opportunists when it comes to sex. And it's almost like Halloween and trick or treat. They knock on the door, get you to drop your pants, they knock one out with you, and then they're on to the next house. And the young lady then wonders, well, he was just a jerk anyway. I really didn't like him. Well, you didn't like yourself enough to say no. Suicide is heading up. Medically assisted is going up. Marijuana psychosis is going up. We still have some strong youth out there who are really trying, but they're up against a hell of an obstacle, that being the media and society and the rest of the crowd. But we have to encourage young people to develop relationships out of love and understanding for one another, because the times are going to get tough and these people are going to have to stick together. And if they're just out after body counts and other things like that, there isn't going to be any regard for each other when the time comes. You're going to have so many people who are going to be so alone. And so I think, feel like they screwed up. They really missed the opportunity here. And they're going to elect to take the suicide route. It's going to be coming. This generation, the Gen Z, Gen X, they're going to be ones that put through the marijuana laws, but they're also going to be ones that are going to put through like the assisted suicide and other things like that to try to make it as an option. Because if life gets to be too hard and too depressing, and there's no job for you out there because AI has taken your craft away from you because you didn't learn to do something with your hands. Like I said, God has hands. They're right here. We all are God's hands. We need to be using these things. Make stuff. Learn to do things. Stretch yourself. When you do things like that, you develop what we call self-esteem. Self-esteem is not something that can be given to you. It's something that you have to earn and you have to create for yourself by doing things. It's not too late, but we have to know what the signs are out there and what the truth is. So next time somebody wants to tell you about the Green New Deal and how you're going to be saving the earth, ask them, how long do I have to live? In the meantime, I love you, and I'll be back.